but the good news is my neighbor has not started his lawnmower yet. So hopefully you'll be able to continue to hear me. I'm going to start by saying that we're advising you that we're both audio and video recording this meeting, and that it shall form part of the record, which will be retained in accordance with the town's retention bylaw. And for more information about that collection, please contact the clerk's office. I'll start by saying that this week is Paramedics Week. And so although I know we do our best to appreciate our paramedics all of the time, particularly this week, we recognize that they're there for us during some of our most worst days. They're there to take care of us. So very happy to recognize Paramedics Week. The open forum is available to anyone to come into the meeting, but we had nobody register for open forum this week, I believe, Madam Deputy Clerk. And so we'll go right to the approval of the agenda. And I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as has been circulated. And I have it moved by Councillor Orsatti and seconded by Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? That is carried. Next is disclosures of interest. If there's any members of council who have a conflict that they'd like to make it known now, seeing none, Councillor Eisses.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to disclose with regards to item 10.1, I believe, the hens in the backyard. My family does own a chicken farm. My uncle and his son-in-law own Ice's farms on Isle Beach Road. I do not have any financial interest in that farm, and I will be commenting on that item, but I just wanted to say that right up front, that just relations and not me personally. So thank you.
Thank you for that, providing that clarity. Much appreciated, I'm sure. Anyone else wish to disclose? Seeing none, we'll move forward then to presentations and petitions. We do have one petitioner here this evening, and that would be Mr. Neil Thompson. Mr. Thompson, whenever you're ready, please feel free to turn on your screen and welcome. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. My name is Neil Thompson. Excuse me. I oppose the ban on chickens in settlement areas as laid out in bylaw 068-06 Schedule C. I have lived in Alcona for 6 years with my wife and 3 daughters, ages 11, 9, and 7. My involvement in this matter began when I was doing grocery shopping for the week. During the COVID-19 situation, the stores had run out of eggs a few times and we were without. That's nothing against the egg farmers or producers. There was just the COVID-19 situation caused the grocery stores to be out, and there was a run on eggs at the time. My 11-year-old daughter did some research on backyard hens, and it looked like a great idea to get a few eggs and provide some education and distraction for my family while isolating. There's a lot of good information online, and local farm stores can provide everything we would need. That's when I discovered the bylaw 068-06 that prohibits hens in settlements in Innisfil. I then emailed Councillor Kenneth Fowler to object to the ban. Councillor Fowler put a notice of motion forward in the last meeting, and I started a change.org petition to submit to the clerk's office. To date, I've collected over 400 signatures in opposition of the ban. Sorry I did not use a town's petition form. However, a traditional petition would be impossible in today's environment. Please accept my petition to change the ban on hens in settlement areas of Innisfil. Some of the reasons backyard hens should be allowed are as follows. Number one, sustainability. Being able to grow food on your own property is a rewarding experience. we plant a garden every year and the kids help out. We love having fresh veggies from the garden, the same way we would love to have fresh eggs as well. Chickens reduce waste as they will eat vegetable scraps. Number 3, chickens eat bugs and ticks. Number 4, a flock of only 4 hens are relatively quiet, far less than the noise that the geese or dogs in the communities would create. And number 5, education. Kids won't see a classroom until September. Educational opportunities are important now. Having the kids help out and learn agriculture, as well as responsibility while reaping the benefits of having fresh eggs, is a golden opportunity. Number 6, mental health. I feel some of the unsung heroes of this pandemic are the children. For months, we have been telling them no. No, you can't go to school. No, you can't see your friends. No, you can't go to the beach or play in the playground. No, your camp is canceled. No, you can't play sports. Kids need something positive now more than ever. A few hens would provide distraction, entertainment, and would certainly help with their mental well-being. Number 7, chickens are easy to keep. They're great with children. A local business has a program where you can rent the hens and everything you need. The coop is small and mobile on wheels, so you can move it around on your lawn. This is an excellent idea. The hens peck at the grass while fertilizing the lawn. Just move the coop every few days and clean with water. No mess, no smell. Your lawn gets fertilized in the process. A little feed and water, collect the eggs in the morning, and you're done. Number 8, surrounding communities already have successful backyard hen programs. Data from other municipalities can be used to further the success of a bylaw to allow hens in settlement areas in Innisfil as well. I would now like to speak to the arguments against allowing hens in settlements of Innisfil. Number 1, people may say chickens are smelly. Large commercial barns or large chicken coops may have a smell. However, a few hens in a mobile, easy to clean coop will not give off a foul smell. A minimal cleaning is all that is required for less than mobile chicken coops as well. People may say chickens attract rodents and predators. Not if the chicken feed is kept in a secure place and the chicken coop is also secure and the chickens are kept inside the coop at night. Number 3, chickens and the eggs they produce will be expensive. The cost of a dozen eggs will be far greater than if I bought a dozen eggs at the store. Yes, that may be the case. However, we have a garden as well, and the garden is far more expensive. Well, not far more, but it is more expensive to grow vegetables than to buy vegetables in a grocery store. But the enjoyment of growing the vegetables is worth the little bit of extra added cost. We still have to supplement vegetables to add to our garden vegetables, the same way we'd have to supplement fresh eggs to supplement the eggs from our hens. And number 4, animal welfare. Our chickens, I can't speak for other people, but our chickens will be kept in a far better shape than maybe chickens in a large commercial operation. They'll have fresh air, water, organic food, room to roam. They will be treated like pets. To be clear, a few backyard hens do not pose a problem to the community or the neighborhood. I feel data from neighboring cities and towns will support this fact. Hens can be kept with minimal effort to provide education, distraction, and a sense of well-being when we really could use it, not to mention some fresh eggs. Please considering allowing hens in settlement areas of Innisfil. Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, very much appreciated. I tell you that Council will be debating the notice of motion later on in the agenda, but if there's any specific questions to Mr. Thomas or to the petition at this time? Seeing none. Oh, Deputy Mayor Davidson.
When reviewing thank you, Worship. When reviewing the petition earlier today, I noticed that a lot of the people who signed the petition were not from Innisfil. Can you give a breakdown later on what percentage is directly from Innisfil and what percentage of the people who signed the petition were from outside of Innisfil? It'd be appreciated.
Yes, I'd be
just so that we're...
Yeah, it was online. It was on social media, so you do get a lot of people from all over North America almost, and yeah, they all definitely try and narrow it down to who was in Innisfil.
Yeah, my concern is I want to satisfy the needs of the people of Innisfil, not the rest of the world. So let's just look at Innisfil first, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. I believe the clerk has that information. Ms. Toma?
Thank you, Your Worship. Of the 410 signatures on the petition, I believe it was 112 or 121 were signed as Innisfil residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. And we certainly understand during the COVID, the inability for you to do a traditional survey. So, you know, understandable during this particular pandemic. Any other questions about the survey or the petition? Councillor Asadi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Thompson, and organizing a survey. I too counted the numbers and felt it was one of the, you know, looking at one of those organization things that go out, because from the participants that signed the petition, they were from outside of Innisfil, United Kingdom, Mexico, Australia. In Canada, they were from British Columbia. So it certainly does spark a lot of interest, but it was just a quarter of the population that was from Innisfil, but certainly enough to start a conversation. And just want to thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments about the petition? Councillor Payne?
Thank you, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just asking Mr. Thompson if he knows how, if he's looking at 4 chickens, how much space it needs for the coop, and how much of a running space that they or a run they call it for the chickens. So you need a total of 72 square feet in your yard to have 4 chickens. Mm-hmm. So not everybody's going to have a property that's got that size of yard for chickens. Yes. So you won't be able to have a garden or anything. So that's a lot of space taken over for 4 chickens. Mm-hmm. And not only that, the cost of building a coop that you're going to have, plus all of the food and everything else. So I just want to give you a heads up on the space and that. So I hope you've done your homework. And I have to give you credit for trying to get all those people on your survey. you got them all over the world. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. The power of social media, it's wonderful. So I would like to, at this time, invite you to either, if you want to stay on the Zoom call and just turn off your video, you're welcome to do that, or you can drop off and follow on the live stream, whichever you prefer. And we will be debating the motion later on in the evening.
Right. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for your time. All right, so the recommendation as seen on the screen is to be received, that the petition be received, and all those in favor, I'm sorry, a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Davidson and Councillor Waters. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. So next is under delegations, and we have a delegation this evening, and we're happy to welcome Ray Duhamel from Jones Consulting Group Limited and Leo Longo from Erdon Berlis. Welcome, gentlemen, and you're going to be speaking to a staff report that we're going to be looking at again later. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Good evening, Your Worship, council members, CAO Rayner and staff. My name's Leo Longo. I'm a solicitor with the law firm of Erdon Berlis. And tonight I'm joined with Ray Duhamel from Jones Consulting. We both have been retained by DD Innisfil Land Limited, who has made an application for a community planning permit for an in-water boathouse. We have reviewed the staff report that is before council this evening, and urge council to adopt the recommendations as set out in that staff report. I'm here to answer any questions you may have, but I'll turn it over now to our land use planner, Ray Duhamel, to go through the application with a bit more information and detail. And he too will be available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Longo. Mr. Duhamel, whenever you're ready, do you have slides that the clerk's office has?
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Yes, I have provided my information in a deputation request, so that is in written form. And then there's one graphic. So when I get to that point, after I made a few comments, I could share the screen. With your permission, I will do that. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've been involved on this file for about 7 years, and I wanted to thank your staff for over that time period. This is one of those properties that falls under both the old regime and the new regime. So there was a previous site plan application that went through, and former rezoning applications that were approved, and the construction of the waterfront dwelling has been well underway for quite some time now. So this is the last piece of the puzzle, but of course you've passed your community planning permit bylaw since the construction of the house started. So the boathouse part of this application would now fall under the new parameters that you've set. And we really appreciated the opportunity to work with staff for our first time to go through, all the different, different elements of the bylaw, make sure that the boathouse ultimately as presented in the application falls within the parameters that are allowed within your bylaw that is, I understand, just been in effect since last year. So the first point we wanted to raise with you is that we've not only have we worked hard with staff to fall within your bylaw parameters, but we've also worked hard to make sure that to the greatest extent possible, there's no environmental impacts as a result of this in-water boathouse. I know that boathouses, following your council agendas and different information in the past, that some boathouses have provided a challenge to council. And in this particular case, we've been very aware of that, and we've tried to create a boathouse on a property that suits and is appropriate and won't create any impacts environmentally or to the neighbors. And to that effect, I've written it in my letter, but I'll just go over those quickly. We have worked with the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. They have issued a permit. They've reviewed the application. They've issued a permit with conditions that are agreeable and entirely reasonable. The Fisheries and Oceans Canada has reviewed the application and confirmed that there's no permit required on their end. The Ministry of Natural Resources has gotten back to us after reviewing the application and by Ontario regulation, waterfront property owners are allowed to have, as of right, single-story boathouses, and that they do not require a permit. But beyond that, and you'll see in the staff report that there's still stairs coming down the slope, and there's some trees that will need to be cut, but we've worked with your staff to come up with conditions that would minimize those tree removals. Only trees that are flagged and inspected and marked on site with your staff present, and where there's agreement for removal of those trees will be allowed to be removed. And the maximum width for that staircase is 1.5 meters coming down. And then the boathouse itself will be in water, mounted on piers. So it's not, there's not a big crib or anything built for the boathouse itself. So a minimal footprint in that sense. I think one of the most relevant aspects of this particular application is that this property is quite unique in the context of the town of Innisfil. It's one of the largest. I didn't measure every property in the town, that's all the waterfront properties, but this is certainly a very large residential waterfront lot. It's just for context, it's almost 10 hectares, which roughly equates to about 25 acres in size, and has 150 meters of water frontage. And 500 feet of, which is over almost 500 feet of water frontage. And so it's important, and we thought to recognize that there's as of right permissions built right into your bylaw for various sizes of properties, from less than 50 meters of water frontage all the way to greater than 61 meters of water frontage. And if I can share my screen now, I cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. I don't know what that means, because I can just speak to it if I can't put this graphic up, but the message from Zoom says you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. So is there another participant sharing?
It might be our deputy clerk, but all of council did receive the graphic that you're talking about. It was in our council package, and it shows the 152 meters of frontage, and then it shows the boathouse rendered in there under, it says Plan A.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if you're looking at that plan, then we tried to use your actual page. That's, excuse a bit crudity of the sketch. It was just to illustrate that we took the page right out of your community planning permit bylaw. That's page 78, by the way. And so the red box is the size of a boathouse that's permitted as of right without any 50% or lesser variations. When your property is greater than 60 meters, so we went with 61. So relatively speaking, that red box is the boathouse, and the 61 meters is the property that it would be associated with. As a percentage, I think the graphic above, which is just a picture of the shoreline and superimposed with the boathouse itself, you can see that the boathouse, even after, if council were inclined to endorse the staff report and approve the application before you, as a percentage and as an overall visual perspective, you can see that the boathouse is quite a small percentage of the larger property than what otherwise would be permitted as of right effectively on a 61 meter lot. That was simply trying to reflect that this is unique. So in this case, we know that we're asking for your permission through and a class 1 permit, which requires your council variation to your standards, but those standards, the variation falls within your bylaw. And we think it's a reasonable request in light of the size and water frontage on this particular property. And we've worked hard to try to accomplish that. I hope you agree. And we would be happy to answer any questions that you have about the application. Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council.
Thank you very much. We will be dealing with this item under C1 of the agenda. But is there questions of either Mr. Longo or Mr. Duhamel at this time? Seeing no questions, I thank you, gentlemen, very much for being with us tonight. And again, you're welcome if you wish to stay on the Zoom and just turn off your video, or you can drop off and get on the live stream if you'd prefer to do that. So I would ask a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation, and perhaps we can put an O on the end of Mr. Longo's name in the recommendation. Councillor Orsatti, and seconded by Councillor Waters. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so next up on the agenda is item number 7, which is County Council, Municipal Association, Conservation Authority, and committee updates. Anyone have any committee updates that they'd like to bring forward? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Worship. I'll just mention that at the last meeting of the Conservation Authority, we did get an update on the surf water protection, and I'm not going to say too much, and I was going to just let you do a quick overview if you want, since your foot is in that area all the time, and I don't want to give better information. So I'll just allow you to give an update on what was said.
Thank you, Councillor. The Source Water Protection Committee that I chair went both towards the Nottawasaga Valley Source Protection Authority, the Severn Sound Environmental Association, and the Lake Simcoe Couchiching Black River Source Protection Authority to deliver our annual report. Progressing satisfactorily, still some work to do. Not sure we're going to make our 2020 July 1st deadline to have all of our risk management plans in place, but we're in a good place, and we certainly will be, because of COVID, behind a bit, but we'll be asking the province for an extension to complete our work. All of the septic inspections around the entire 52 municipalities have been completed. All of the amendments to official plans are either completed or in progress. and many of the risk management plans are in place. And being that it's quite significant that it was 20 years ago this month that Walkerton happened. So we now have in the province of Ontario, one of the most robust water protection that anywhere in the world. The program's been mimicked all over the world. And actually there's a new logo out today. I will share with you all. It's called Trust the Tap. And it's how far we've come in the last 20 years since Walkerton. Thank you for the opportunity, Councillor. Any other comments from people? Updates? Councillor Feller?
Just a reminder to everybody that we still have the Helping Hands Committee in action for the COVID-19 relief. Anybody who's been affected by it directly. The three gentlemen, including Mr. Jacobs, are working well together. We're getting the applications in on a steady basis. We're finding that we have enough resources currently to handle the influx and that everything is going smoothly, but we're here if anybody needs help. This is what we did it for, right?
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor, did you have any county update that you'd like to?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, my one concern was at County Council this week and looking at the financial impact of COVID-19 with federal assistance, provincial assistance. Right at the current moment, we're running at about a $6.1 million deficit. However, it's an ongoing process and we'll continue to work with the federal government, provincial government, to see where we can offset some of these costs that we are incurring. I married Councillor Dolan in that position. She's aware of it very well. Also, just to give you a heads up, I think the number that we calculated was almost 1.4 million that they're spending at the county just on PPE alone and to assist the staff that have been what's the word? Not recommitted. Redeployed. Yeah, redeployed. So the county is very concerned with the offset of deferring the tax share from the municipalities, how that's going to impact us at the county level. But rest assured that at county, we're going to do our best to not borrow money if we can and to make it easier on the taxpayers in Simcoe County. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll add a couple of things to that as well. The Simcoe County Forest did their 2019 annual report, and it was a really good news story. For those of you who aren't aware, Simcoe County has the largest municipal forest in Ontario, and they manage 33,000 acres of forest, which contributed $2.2 million in timber sales just last year. And they take that whole 2.2 million and pour it back into the program in order to purchase more property and more forests. They planted 175,000 seedlings last year and created a habitat for the Kirkland warbler, and also created a building called the Red Pine House at the Simcoe County Museum, which is dedicated to the history of Simcoe County Forest since 1922. They also have a couple of what they call high conservation value forests that have either endangered species or species at risk that they protect. The other point I wanted to make was about we had an update from Solid Waste Management. And you will remember back in February when the change to the collection happened. It happened really because there was a labor shortage at the time and we were having trouble getting everything picked up. So we changed it so that you still got the same amount. You were able to put out the same amount just at a different time. So garbage and green bin one week, recycling and green bin the next week. So just making that change has year over year from 2019 to 2020 has seen an 18% drop in garbage. And that is even considering the fact that we're all home way more than, I know I'm cooking more at home. I'm creating more waste than I ever did, just because I'm home so much. And so that's a real startling number to me. And then also it had a 36% increase in organics diversion, which again is huge, because the more we can collect in the green bin, the less those organics are going in the landfill site, less greenhouse gases, better for the environment, and of course lengthens the time that our landfills, or the life cycle of our landfill sites. So that was another good news story. I did want to speak briefly to, I'm sure, the shock of the report that came from the Canadian Armed Forces about some long-term care homes and some of the conditions that were highlighted in that report. And I want to assure you that the residents of the 4 long-term care homes that are owned and operated by our municipal government are not in the same situation. GM Jane Sinclair made that very clear to us, and concerned, I guess, about everyone being painted with the same brush, and that our long-term care homes, the quality of the service that our residents get is good, and that families with loved ones in one of our 4 long-term care homes should not be worried that some of the things in that report are happening in our homes. So that's the county report. It was a long one this week. Any other reports from committees? Or seeing none, then we'll move to the next slide, which was the nomination form for AMO. So I have not, because I ran for president in 2016 and was successful by acclamation, and then the past president for 2 more years. So it's been 4 years since I've actually had to file a nomination form or run for election, and it'll be very different this year because the elections will be held and the whole conference will be held virtually. But I just wanted to say that. So mover and a seconder for the motion. Councillor Nicol, Councillor Van Berkel, all those in favor? That's carried. I'll just add that there should be less expenses also, because there's no travel, obviously, everything's done virtually, so that will help as well. And I really do think it's beneficial for Innisfil to have that connection and ability to get in front of ministers on a regular basis. Okay, next item is the consent list. So we'll go through our bingo calling game here, and please feel free to comment on any item if it's just a comment, or if you want to pull it for a more fulsome discussion, we can also accommodate that. And for those of you watching, if anything doesn't get pulled, that means that council is happy with the recommendation that staff have put in the agenda, and at the end of this meeting that would be ratified. So we'll start with A1, special council meeting minutes dated May 6th. A2, special council meeting minutes dated May 13th. A3, council meeting minutes dated May 13th. B1, Pitchin Committee report dated May the 4th. I did have one comment I wanted to make on that, if I could. I noticed that that in the minutes that the group is talking about maybe moving something to the fall. And as you know, Minister Europe was here last fall to talk about the very first ever Ending Litter Day, I think it was called, in Ontario, which was supposed to be coinciding in May with our Pitchin Day. And that didn't happen, but they are looking at doing something else in October, which is, there's a week in October called Reducing Waste Week. So there, hopefully, maybe we can coincide with that group if that would at all work with the committee. So I'm just throwing it out there, and I see the chair of the committee is nodding his head, so that's a good sign. Thank you, Councillor. Next is B2, the Helping Hands Program Committee report. And there were 2 of them. B3 is the same. Councillor Waters. You're on mute, Councillor.
B3 would like that pulled on the which, because the slide's not showing the right, it's showing B2.
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah.
That was my error, not the clerk. So
Yeah.
you want to pull the Accessibility Advisory Committee report?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Next is C1, the DD Innisfil Lands Community, the Class 1 permit. Okay. Councillor David, Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say that I was very impressed with reading this report and the detail that went into it in respecting the environment in the particular area. I do know that area, but I really want to thank them for what they've proposed and how they've done it compared to a lot of the other houses that have been built on Lake Simcoe, where they build what they want and deal with it later and just simply pay the fines. So what's been presented here, I have no problem with at all. I'm very impressed. I just wish everybody else that wanted to build a boathouse on Lake Simcoe would respect it in such a way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment similar that staff always does a very good job of looking at these different things. It's like a committee of adjustment staff report, and it does meet all the criteria. So it should be a simple yes anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next is C2, and that is the Avondale Group DC deferral request. Seeing no comments. Next is C3, the designation of under the Heritage Act. C4, the Fire Chief Services Agreement. I just want to take a moment to commend staff, particularly Ms. Pegg and of course our fire chief for finding very ways to find efficiencies in our municipality. And I know that this falls in line with the regional government review and what they were looking for. And so I think this is a great first step. Thank you. Next is D1, the Road Resurfacing Award. Councillor Sadi, you want to refer to
that, please.
Thank you. There are no bylaws, so we'll go for correspondence for action. That would be F1, the council discretionary fund request for Nantire. Deputy Mayor Davidson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, F1 and F2, I don't want to pull them. I just want to say a special thank you to the parents who got involved, who go through endless hours of really getting involved with these schools more than others. And that the leadership that they're showing towards the youth is absolutely amazing. And a special thank you to them. The council, I'm sure we all appreciate what they've done to make this happen. Thank you.
Yes, like normally we would give these bursaries out in person and go to the graduation ceremonies. And of course that can't happen this year, but I believe that the students that are just as, I've lost the word. So just as they should, somebody help me. They deserve it just as much. This is what I am.
It's just as important whether they're there or not, that it does happen and council respects it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. That's why you're my deputy. You got my back.
Yeah.
Okay, so next is item G1, the BWG Innisfil Police Services Board meeting minutes. I have one comment on that. If you saw in the minutes, they've acquired a drone, and it's already been put to good use. There was a suspect that was fleeing from a vehicle, and we had both the K9 officer and the drone there. And again, this is also will be able to be used in fire services as well, to find hotspots in fires and to keep the fire people safe. They don't have to go into the fire to find these hotspots. And next is the highlights from Simcoe County, which we did already. And that's everything. So now we need the motion to refer the consent list. So we have 2 items. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Van Berkel, Councillor Fowler, all those in favor? That's carried. Next is resolve to committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Waters, seconded by Councillor Ices. All those in favor? And that's carried. So our first item was pulled by Councillor Waters, item B3.
Okay, I guess I need somebody seconder. Can somebody, Ken?
Councillor Fowler seconded, yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. I just wanted to pull this report because I just wanted to illustrate item 6.1 with the, let's see, with the committee's comments on the Jack Street Trail. And these are things that we've kind of brought forward at other meeting, making sure that that staff ensure that we talk to the board and the various people in and around the area to make sure that everyone has had an opportunity to have a say and agree that that the trail is going to go through, be maintained, and maybe limit access to things. So I just want to make sure that staff have read this part and are trying to address all these concerns that were raised by the Accessibility Committee towards the Jack Street Trail and Bridge to Goodfellow Public School.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Jenkins, but before I do, I was remiss in the county report and not saying that the grant was approved from the county under the trail program for this. Ms. Jenkins?
Through your worship to Councillor Waters, thank you for flagging this for us. We will make note of all of those comments and we will provide an update to the committee.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually, sorry, one of our staff, one of our residents, Carlene, had brought this to my attention. So I just thought I'd raise it and let you know that it's in there.
Great. Thank you for that. So all in favor of approving those minutes? Everybody? Thank you. That's carried. Next is item D1, and Councillor Arsati pulled that item.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Bill Van Berkel is the seconder for me on this. I wanted to pull this item for discussion with regards to selective resurfacing for the 7th line from the 20th to Lake Simcoe. And I'll just make some of my comments and then I'll look for some direction and information from Ms. Jenkins that can help also for the public that are quite interested in what's happening and when. So this is for the widening. The design phase in the report states that it was summer of 2019. Utility route locations required 8 months for the detailed design. It was tentative for 2021 construction. It's gone in a holding pattern for selective patching. And that's where I'd like some more direction on to improve until widening in 2021. However, with the orbit discussions, it's now anticipating, it says in the report, higher volumes of traffic on the 7th. Therefore, the design phase is now on hold until further traffic modeling can be complete. So my questions are, can you please help explain what is or describe selective patching? Is that hot and cold patch in potholes? And how long is this going to last? How long is it going to be repeated? Because this is a very poor road condition with a lot of people, very concerned with their vehicles. We have increased heavy use because of the new subdivision. And also, what is the projected timeline that we're going to have for the data on the orbit impact traffic modeling to be complete to know when this will actually be a resurfaced road? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Jenkins, did you get all those questions? Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Orsatti. Yes, there's a lot of complex things happening along the 7th line that we are taking into account. We had finished the environmental assessment and we're starting the design phase. However, recognizing that our operations team has been working very hard to try and maintain that road in the meantime until the widening can be completed. We recognized that we needed to take action on some more significant repairs in the meantime to help hold that road. So in this case, selective resurfacing and patching that's referred to in the report is not just cold patching that our operations team typically completes. This scope of work is going to include cutting and digging out significant areas of asphalt and also some of the granular base, and doing some base repairs and then replacing the asphalt in those areas. So the repairs will be significantly more in scope than what our typical operations team completes. And so this work will hold for a number of years until we're able to complete that modeling. We're hoping to have the modeling completed through the Orbit project within the next year to 18 months. And then at that time, we will take a look at the widening again, just to make sure that we incorporate those traffic volumes into the design.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Ms. Jenkins, just some clarification on that. So the repair's more significant. So this will hold seasonally throughout the year, winter and cold, longer, you're saying for a couple of years. Okay, and is this, it seems the concentrated area with the worst road area is from the railroad tracks going east to Webster, that intersection in that area. So they'll concentrate a lot in that, or they're gonna do all the selective patching from the 20th to Lake Simcoe. Is it all along or selective?
Ms. Jenkins?
Through your worship to Councillor Orsatti, it is selective. It won't be the whole width of the road the entire way down that's repaired, but we do recognize that a significant amount of work will be done on that road, and that's been included in the contract. So we're focusing on the worst areas and repairing the areas that need to be repaired in order to hold the road for the next few years. And yes, to confirm, because we are doing some repairs to the granular base below the asphalt, we anticipate that this will be able to hold throughout a few winter cycles.
Councillor, you good? I'd also flagged that report and also that particular piece of road to suggest that maybe we should, when it comes around to that time of doing it, we should work with communications to make sure we get the proper message out to the residents, because the residents know that this project they've been anticipating it for many years. And my fear is that they'll see the selective patching and think that's it, not understanding that that's a stopgap and to keep the road passable until the widening is done. So if there's an opportunity to work with communications to make sure that message gets out to folks at that time, I think it will help people understand a little bit better where we're going. Anyone else? Seeing none, we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor of the recommendation for D1? And that is carried. Thank you, everyone. Next is our RISE recommendation, and I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Fowler, Councillor Van Berkel, all those in favor? That's carried. And consideration of adoption of the Committee of the Whole recommendations. Councillor Oshadi, Councillor Nicol, all those in favor? And that is carried. And next is our motion, notice of motion. And it's moved by Councillor Fowler. Councillor Fowler, did you have a seconder for your motion? Councillor Van Berkel, I saw your hand.
Thank you.
Did you want to speak to this, Councillor Fowler?
Yes, I've done some research on this topic when it was brought forth to me. And I just want to give people some numbers to work with when we discuss this. When it boils down to it, this is being even discussed even to February of this particular year in Springwater. To give everybody a bit of background and why the municipalities are thinking about this or not, like in Springwater, for example, they had almost 400 survey replies when they put it out. 55% of the people were interested. 73% of the people who put in the information and answered the survey were supportive of the backyard chickens, provided they have the cleanliness provision. They limit the number of them, I believe, was to 4, and there's no roosters. So they started, I believe they're starting a test pilot program. Oro Medonte, if you have an acre, you can have up to 6 hens or chickens. That's more the rural situation. So I took a look down into more dense populations as to what we have. If you take a look at Toronto, they have 4 wards that allow it: Ward 5, Ward 13, Ward 21, and Ward 32. They have a maximum of 4 chickens, no roosters. They have to be used for pets or personal use. So you could use it for educational purposes or therapy, for the case may be. They limit the size of the coop, so it can't be bigger than a certain size. Adequate space at 4 square foot per chicken in the coop. So depending on how many chickens you have, you would increase the size. You would have to have doors that lock at night and a roof to prevent other animals from attempting to make away with your chickens. They have standards in place, a meter from the property line and 3 meters from the neighbor's domicile or house at any point in time from the closest point. These things are all in place and they seem to be working. And I'm thinking if rural towns can make it happen, and on top of that, you have towns like cities like Toronto making it happen, you know, I mean, and if you take a look at, say, Ward 32, that's down by the beaches. So, I mean, the runoff to the lake is not severe. We're talking about situations where people can actually properly maintain livestock, you know, but have it reasonably safe, sane, and sanitary. I think the idea to be discussed is a fair option. You know, we don't have to immediately change the bylaw, but I mean, for example, Simcoe County in this past week put out a poll, and it's very polarizing. I will admit that. You know, it's roughly 45 to 55% either side, and it fluctuates back and forth. But we have a lot of people who wish this and wish to support this.
Thank you, Councillor. And I just, before we get into the debate, I just want to frame it just a little bit because some of the emails I get, I'm concerned that the expectations, I want to manage expectations in the community right off the bat. So if this motion passes tonight, this motion says that we investigate it, that staff go out, talk to other municipalities, find out the do's and the don'ts, find out what's working well and what's not working well, what the complaints are that they're getting, and then also do an engagement with our community, because that is, we have to do our due diligence as well to make sure we do what Springwater did and what other communities did, and go out and have that engagement with our community. All of that during a pandemic is will lengthen the time that will take. So I guess my point is that this isn't putting chickens in your yard next week. This will take time to do this engagement. All that information will then come back to council, and council will make an informed decision based on all of that information coming back. So I just wanted to make that one point. The other point I wanted to make quickly was we don't ban chickens everywhere. Right now, our bylaw says that in specific settlement areas, that is where chickens are not allowed, in specific settlement areas. But in the vast geography that is Innisfil, everywhere else there is chickens and many other types of animals that are allowed. So just wanted to frame that a little bit and then open up for questions and comments. So Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I seconded this motion because of the now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to investigate. And you know yourself, we went through this, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when chickens were allowed in Innisfil, and we got tons and tons of complaints at that time, and it was decided not to have chickens because of that. You know, we had people, you know, that were upset because of the manure that came from chickens. We had people upset because some people don't know the difference between a hen and a rooster, and woke everybody up on Sunday morning. They should be woken up to go to church, but nevertheless, you know, there were complaints. So there were lots of complaints, and I hope that staff, I've done a little bit of investigation on it myself, that they talk to people like, you know, Guelph Vet Clinic, who are experts, and, you know, they're experts in the avian flu, which, you know, is serious in chickens. And we have to remember that we have some big chicken farmers here in Innisfil, and that ever happened, I mean, they'd lose thousands of birds and thousands of dollars. So, you know, I like chickens, but we need to really, really think about this, and we need to think back of why we, you know, put this bylaw into place in the first place, you know, because it hasn't been here that long. It's only been here, and I don't know, Madam Mayor, you probably know, since 2005 or 2006 when we worked on that.
Mm-hmm.
So 6, okay, thank you. So it hasn't been here for that long, and there is a reason why that bylaw was put in place, and I hope that they do investigate it before, and, you know, and send back a real good report that you know, say yay or nay to certain things, and reasons why we should do it. I want to see them all, but I you know, I'm concerned a little bit about, because we have chicken farmers in our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Payne.
Take the turn. I don't know if you said my name or not, but I'm going to be here. The major problem that I have with this one is how this is going to affect our local business, like our chicken farmers that are in Innisfil that have been here for many years. How is this going to affect them? And this is my main concern. I don't have a problem with people with chickens in their yard as long as they're responsible and they do the right thing. But my main concern is the chicken farmers right now. So we'll see how this turns out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Your Worship. Obviously, Mr. Thompson provided an impressive petition. I counted there was 376 people that signed that. About 300 of those were not from Innisfil. And again, it was kind of stated that I don't know the relevance of somebody from Albuquerque, New Mexico weighing in on chickens on Innisfil, but that's fine. I do know that council also received correspondence from a chicken farmer who brought up many relevant concerns about allowing chickens in residential areas. But I'm comfortable getting more factual information from staff to help council make an informed decision on this at a later time. So, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I too did a lot of thinking about this motion this week, and I was asked quite a few times how I felt about it initially, and you know, a lot of farmers they agree with all the things that Mr. Thompson said at the beginning. You know, and that's why they're farmers. You know, the interaction with animals, the sense of accomplishment with raising good quality food. But as I got into it a little bit further, there are definitely risks to backyard hens. So I if you just bear with me for a minute, some of them have been already been talked about, but just a background for the whole industry. So 96% of eggs produced in Ontario are produced by egg farmers, commercial egg farmers. There's about 500 of them. 4%, that leaves 4%, which are produced by home consumption, small farms, and they have an exemption from the Ontario Farm Markets, the Ontario Farm Products Market Act, and they're allowed to have 100 chickens, unless there's a stipulation, a bylaw that says otherwise. So that's what we have now. In settlement areas, we don't allow chickens, but anywhere else in rural Innisfil, you are allowed to have 100 chickens for home consumption and farm gate sales. So that provision is out there. The risks that farmers are aware of, and that the biosecurity that is in place, it's mentioned about avian flu. Councillor Van Berkel mentioned that. That virus is transferred by migratory birds, particularly avian birds that fly over in the spring and the fall. And if they come in contact with these backyard hens and transmit that, it is immediately a reportable offense to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And the Canadian Food Inspection Agency will draw a 10-kilometer circle around where they found the virus, and they will depopulate every chicken in that 10-kilometer radius. So that's a risk. There's another disease that is quite concerning, and it's a respiratory disease. It's got a big long name. It's called infectious laryngotracheitis, or ILT for short. If a farm is, and that is transferred through the air, if that, and it's predominantly in backyard chickens, if that is found in an area, the area is quarantined, and there's a huge degree of biosecurity that happens. People in the industry aren't allowed to drive through there, and that happens more regularly. The avian flu, the last occurrence was in 2015 in Woodstock, and 2014 in British Columbia. So it's not an unheard of risk. The ILT, there was just an occurrence in Halton 2 weeks ago, and that area was quarantined, and it was traced to backyard flocks. So these are the risks that commercial farmers are concerned about. The other big risk that we have is with salmonella. Salmonella is in eggs, just like E. coli is in milk, and there's all kinds of different strains of salmonella and E. coli. If the one that they're concerned about is salmonella enteritis. So if you have an ungraded cracked egg that gets salmonella in it, and the young child eats it, they will get very sick. There are cases where they have died. Commercial farms are tested many times a year for Salmonella enteritis. If it's found in the barn is depopulated. So these are the risks that industry talks about. Our food system is incredibly safe. We never hear about people getting sick from Salmonella because our food safety system catches it. So before I learned about the biosecurity that is so strong in the industry, I felt like Mr. Thompson, you know, everybody should have that experience. But the risks for myself are too large, and I feel that even spending staff time on this would, at this time, we are aware of what viruses can do right now, probably more than any other time. So that would be my comments on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ices. Mr. Rayner, did you want something? You turned your video on, so that made me think you wanted to speak.
Did, Your Worship, I just wanted to pick up on your note at the beginning of this conversation about expectations. There is no specific timeline outlined for a report back to council. So I think it's important and transparent that I advise you that this would not be at the top of our priority list, given that we're still in a state of emergency, which in my mind means several months. So I just want to manage timelines. And if that's not what council's expectation, if you could provide direction. Thank you, Worship.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Councillor Asadi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I just want to chime in on this conversation. I think it's as popular as the pets in the workplace for those of us on council that went through that one. I had the experience of resident in my ward having a beautiful chicken coop. It would have made, I'm sure it came from Martha Stewart. It had to be over $1,000. It was gorgeous, and they had complaints, and bylaw was involved. And these couple chickens that they had were their children's pets, and they were in tears because bylaw said that they had to get rid of them. We managed to do a grandfather because, well, there was several things that were an issue and concerned by bylaw because of residents complaining about these 3 chickens that they had. One was the health and welfare of the chickens, because residents didn't feel, even though they're in this glamorous chicken coop and didn't run over the yard, winterizing, they weren't provided protection from the freezing cold temperature. The attraction of mice and rats in the area because of the waste. So those were the concerns that residents had, that were the complaints that they called bylaw and got them involved. The family was at that time allowed, because there were pets, grandfather, they only had about a year left in their life, and they had to get rid of them, get rid of the coop, and couldn't have them again. And they were very appreciative of that short window. So a couple things that I think of. First off, I think the chickens are, you know, look like a great idea. It is an education. After listening to Councillor Ices, I think being a farmer, he has a lot of great information. I've had requests for pet pigs in my ward, and those were turned down. So it expands beyond chickens. I have a pair of foxes, male and female, that go in my backyard, and I'm sure that they would be holding little placards right now that say, yes, bring in the chickens. So there is, you know, we have a lot of wildlife. But in Ward 3, I would, you know, certainly be concerned with lot sizes, townhouses, restrictions, and so there would have to be a lot. It's certainly something that if the rest of council is interested in, that it would require a staff report and a very detailed one with data and looking at other wards to come back to council, as your worship you have mentioned, before we can make a decision on that. But I just want to share that for me, it would be the concerns of lot sizes, townhouses, and where could these chickens go, and the staffing time for bylaw. So would there be requirements such as licensing to cover the extra bylaws staffing times? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Waters?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to thank the presenter for his very positive outlook on hens in Innisfil. I think he did a good job. I think the education piece to this, and I actually did call Councillor Ices and spoke to him originally. And it seems like he's had some opportunity to think about it and put some thoughtful words to, the issues around hens. But I think the educational piece is really quite important for young children. And I speak that good friends of ours had a daughter who wanted to raise chickens. They raised 4 chickens, never an issue with them. They asked the neighbors whether there was an issue with them. The neighbors didn't have an issue with them. They're quiet. They're well taken care of. They had eggs every day. They still had to go and buy eggs because the 4 chickens never laid enough eggs to feed the entire family. So there's no fear of farmers going out of work because there's they're not going to interfere with that piece. This young lady went on to work for Mr. Ices, and then she went on to work at the Ministry of Agriculture and is a top-notch researcher. And I think without that opportunity to engage with that type of fowl, she would never done that. And I think on educational purposes, there's a lot of validity to it. I think the staff, I think it's worthwhile taking a look at this to find out, the chicken flu is a serious issue. And I think, in a proper report, we'll find out what is the percentage of chances of that happening. I think, I was down in Key West and the compound we stayed in had chickens running all over the place. It was great. Every morning we sat with the chickens, they clucked, we drank our coffee. It was really quite a nice feel to Key West. So I think there is some opportunity here to have a good, thorough investigation into this and get a good report. There's lots of other communities doing it, high density communities doing it. So it'd be nice to see, what the issues are, and, if it's appropriate, we take a look at adjusting our bylaw to limit the number of hens to 4 hens, and making sure, and we treat it like any other offense. Like I've had lots of bylaw issues around dogs, homeowners having 3 and 4 dogs and not cleaning up after them, and the mess and the smell. So it always comes down to having, owners who take care of their pets. And I see that's what this is, their pets. On our street, we have a huge pig who lives on the street. I think it's an emotional support pig, but lives on our street. And I'm always amazed when I cycle by and I see this absolutely huge pig on our street. Never had an issue with it. So anyways, I think it's worthwhile going through the investigation, find out what the report says, and see what the issues are, and what the probability of affecting farms. Because like Councillor Ices says, a 10-kilometer range, all you need is to have one outbreak, and that's Ices chicken farm gone. So I think it's worthwhile looking into still. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Just one additional note, some situations and municipalities have a licensing fee for the hens that they have for the backyard chickens. So if we were to investigate and discover, for example, that put a price per chicken per year, for example, you would then be able to understand the layout, the density of the backyard chickens in certain areas. And if a problem arises, then you could literally call up the person having the log and the record of who has how many at what location. And should there be an issue with bylaw, for example, the fees, I believe, would actually offset the additional time bylaw would take to do it. And then they wouldn't have to track down, okay, somebody, for example, on Ireton has an issue with a chicken. Well, who has chickens? Let's go knock on every door. That, 3 houses on the street have it. And then this is where it was the location of where the issue arose. So you could literally minimize the time that bylaw is investigating and on top of that, address it in a more formal and perfunctory manner.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? The joys of living in a half rural, half urban municipality. It's not the first time we've come up with issues like this. The fire ban or the fire permit bylaw also created issues between those who could and those who couldn't, and we'll see it again here. Full disclosure, my daughter lived in Clearview. She had 8 hens and a chicken coop. Good and bad points. Yes, she had eggs all the time. The chickens, some of them weren't well. They just ate themselves to death. But having to deal with the dead stock and actually euthanizing them was another issue. And they've since got out of it, only because it was more work than they had originally anticipated. So that's just my personal experience with it. But I think that we'll see now where everybody lands. So if you've read the motion, if there's been no amendments, all in favor of investigating this further? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's carried. Those opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Next on the agenda, and just for those who are tuning in for that particular item, please note the CAO, we are in a state of emergency. This is not going to be the top thing on our list. So it could be several months before you see a report back, not only for staff time, but it's also very hard to engage the public when we can't actually meet with them. So next is announcements from members of council. Any announcements this evening? Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Reminding everybody that currently we have the Caring Card campaign going on, started by Bonnie Barth, my resident in Ward 5. We are going to be doing this until the 30th. We are awaiting, as Councillor Orsatti is aware, of Nantir Shore donating cards as well. And once we gather everything and everything has been sanitized accordingly, Councillor Orsatti and I have been invited to go with Bonnie Barth to do the delivery of the cards themselves. We've had a lot of people step up for this, and this is really amazing. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's put forth the effort. It's just really nice to see a community come together like this.
Thank you. Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it's wonderful to have the opportunities to share good news at this time. And, there's so many residents throughout the town of Innisfil that are doing great deeds. And I'm very proud of one in Ward 3. Jennifer Richardson has had a son who is graduating, and in the dilemma that all Innisfil grads have, girls that have bought dresses, boys that have bought suits, family celebrations, parties to recognize these students who were graduating. And with the provincial restrictions due to the COVID-19, all of that is gone. So 2020, it's just disappearing without any recognition of these milestones in those graduating. Senior kindergarten is a big thing, grade 8 grads and high school grads. What Jennifer Richardson has done is she has created a Facebook site called Innisfil Graduates. And what happens is family members or neighbors, teachers, can nominate Innisfil students who have graduated either senior kindergarten, grade 8, or high school. And they put a little profile with a picture on this site, and they put the children up for adoption. And sponsors will look at it and ask to adopt that grad. And then what they do is they write a nice card congratulating the student. They will do a little gift bag. I have mine here. I've adopted 7 students to date. There are students from Cookstown. I saw a posting of one who's still looking for a sponsor, but there has been 76 students on the site. 58 have been nominated, have been adopted, and others are still waiting for sponsors. So the success of this is here we have somebody who's taken the initiative to make sure that all Innisfil students and graduates are being recognized, whether it's a business or a person. So I encourage other council members and those watching, nominate your the children or your neighbor or students and teachers if you can do the same. And for the public to be able to sponsor, it doesn't take a lot of money. It's about letting those students know that we in Innisfil care. We are community proud. We are proud of people such as Jennifer Richardson, who has done this, and proud of all the people, these students and the people who are the sponsors. So, and thank you to Innisfil Today for putting a great article on this as well. So how wonderful is this that we can really talk about that at this time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for bringing that up, Donna. I just to let you know that I did my visit this morning to an Innisfil graduate, and he lived in Stroud. I'm not going to give names or anything, and he was just so excited that I did that. It really means a lot to them because they missed out on a very special occasion. So he was quite pleased that I did that. And if every one of us could just get one child or one student and do that, it just burst my heart really, because it was just such a wonderful feeling. So, and I met a new friend. So he's my adopted grandson, and I'm his adopted grandmother. So it all works out. So it's a great thing to do. So super.
Thank you. Any other
just as a follow-up to Councillor Payne, I've adopted sponsored grads from Goodfellow School, Elkona Glen, Nantyre, and is it the one in your ward, Bill, Simcoe?
Lake Simcoe.
Simcoe, yeah, public. I haven't got a kindergarten senior yet. I really want to sponsor a little kid. So looking forward to finding one. I have 7. I'm doing 6 deliveries tomorrow.
Thank you.
I think you were talking about Killarney Beach, were you?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Council. Any other announcements? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to remind the residents that there's still time to get the early order discount on your 200th anniversary Innisfil Historical Society book. So if you want to reach out to that, I'm sure it'll be on the town website. You can save a few dollars and you'll have a good commemorative piece from the 200th anniversary of Innisfil.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other announcements? I have a couple of quick ones. For those of you starving of sports fans that have nowhere, Bruce Barber called from Georgian Downs, and horse racing is now going to be able to be started again, and the racing starts at Georgian Downs on June the 6th. That's the good news. The bad news is you can't go. Only the judge and the jockeys can go, or the drivers. But you can watch it live stream via Georgian Downs. And if you're also like to wager on them, you can do that interactively on Horse Players Interactive if you haven't been able to get your gambling fix lately. So that's from that. Friday evening, there is a special concert. It's a virtual concert, and it is held in honor of Innisfil's bicentennial, and it will be by singer-songwriter Michael Gabriel. I spoke to him today. He's in a place called Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. And yes, there really is a place called that. I looked it up. But he's looking forward, it's 8 o'clock, and he's looking forward to serenading all of Innisfil Friday evening at 8 o'clock, and that's a free concert. And then my final announcement this evening is our great announcement yesterday that we announced our partnership with Ryerson DMZ. Really excited about this. It's ranked the #1 university-based business incubator in the world. And they've been around for 9 years. They've helped 452 startups. They've raised $741 million in seed funding. And those companies now employ over 4,000 people. So Innisfil will join San Francisco, New York City, Dubai as being one of the partners for Ryerson DMZ. So it really puts us on the map again. So thank you to staff for that. Mr. Rayner, anyone from staff have any other announcements for the good of the corporation? Seeing none. Okay, then we'll move to the confirming bylaw. And I'd ask a mover and a seconder to confirm tonight's agenda or tonight's council meeting. Councillor Ices and Deputy Mayor Davidson. All those in favor? That is carried. And finally, our adjournment. So the moved by Councillor Nichols, seconded by Councillor Fowler, that we adjourn at 8:25. Thank you all very much for who've stayed with us throughout this whole evening. And I would remind council, please do not log off because we do